Zylara sat stiffly on the edge of her sleeping platform, staring at her hands as if expecting them to provide an answer. They didn't. They never did. A warrior trusted their instincts, and hers had never failed her. Until now. She clenched her fists. Something was wrong. The ritual was complete. The once-a-year act had been performed, as was tradition. The biological obligation was fulfilled. The sacred duty of her people to ensure the survival of the species had been met. Yet her body remained unsettled. Her fingers curled against the smooth surface of the platform as a wave of heat rippled through her, unfamiliar and unrelenting. The aftermath was supposed to be cooling, numbing, a period of absolute satisfaction. Instead, she clenched her thighs together, jaw locking. It was the human's fault. Zylara shot to her feet, fists at her sides, and stormed down the narrow corridor of the vessel. She ignored the curious glances from passing warriors, her footsteps growing heavier with purpose. This was unnatural. This was unacceptable. She reached his quarters and struck the control panel with more force than necessary. The door slid open to reveal Ethan, lounging lazily in a chair, feet propped up on a table. He looked up, smirking in that infuriatingly human way. "Well, if it isn't my favorite annual visitor," Ethan drawled, stretching. "Back so soon?" Zyara's sharp teeth bared. "You did something to me." Ethan blinked. Then he grinned. "I'd like to take credit, really. But I'm pretty sure it was mutual." She strode forward, planting both hands on the arms of his chair and caging him in. His scent lingered, warm and maddening. His pupils dilated just slightly. She ignored the way that sent a thrill down her spine. "I am not supposed to feel like this," she growled. "I have never experienced this lingering urge." Ethan raised a brow. "Lingering urge?" Her lip curled. "Do not mock me, human. The ritual is precise. It serves its function. It does not extend beyond necessity." Ethan's smirk widened. "So why are you standing here, fists clenched, looking like you're either about to strangle me or jump me?" Zyara's nostrils flared. "Because you have corrupted my instincts." Ethan chuckled, shifting slightly in his seat, clearly enjoying her predicament. "Corrupted? That's a strong word. Maybe you just enjoyed it?" Her body reacted before her mind caught up. She seized his collar, hauling him upright until they were nose to nose. "It is not meant to be enjoyed. It is biological efficiency. A means to an end." Ethan met her glare unruffled. "You sure? Because from what I remember you were." She dropped him abruptly, stepping back as if burned. Silence. His laughter followed her. Zyara turned sharply, striding toward the exit. This was pointless. A warrior did not succumb to weakness. And yet, every step away from him only intensified the dull ache inside her, the one she refused to name. She needed a solution. The healer's chamber was dimly lit, the scent of herbs and sterilized instruments filling the air. Zyara stood rigidly as the elder examined her, the lone fingers pressing against pressure points along her arms and shoulders. "You appear to be in perfect condition," the healer mused. Zyara gritted her teeth. "Then why do I feel unfulfilled?" The healer's brow ridges lifted. "Unfulfilled?" A muscle ticked in her jaw. "It is difficult to explain." "Try." Zyara exhaled sharply, shifting on her feet. "The ritual was completed. Yet my body craves another round. I do not understand." The healer hummed, deep in thought. "This has never occurred before?" "No." "And the human, he was the variable this time, was he not?" Zyara stiffened. The healer continued contemplative. "Perhaps the human has awakened something in you. Something beyond the usual cycle." Zyara stared at her. "You are suggesting he altered my biology." "I am suggesting that perhaps humans are more compatible than we assumed." Zyara's fists clenched. "No. Impossible. He must have done something." The healer's expression was unreadable. "Perhaps it is not what he did." but rather what you allowed yourself to experience. See why Lara scoffed, turning sharply on her heel. This is not an answer. She stormed out, her mind a whirlwind of conflict. This was not natural. It was not logical. And yet, her traitorous body refused to let go of the memory. She found herself back at his quarters before she could think better of it. The door slid open. Ethan took one look at her and grinned. Miss me? Lara shoved him inside. Ethan barely managed to regain his balance before she was in his space again, eyes blazing. Tell me what you did. He blinked. Again, pretty sure that was a two-way. She slammed a hand against the wall beside his head. I feel unbalanced. That has never happened before. You will fix it. Ethan tilted his head. Define fix. She growled. He bit back a smirk. Look, Lara, I hate to break it to you, but maybe, just maybe, you just liked it. Her entire frame tensed. I do not. Then why are you still thinking about it? Silence. Ethan's smirk widened. Lara inhaled sharply, forcing herself to step back. This conversation is over. She turned on her heel and fled before he could say anything else. Behind her, Ethan's laughter echoed down the corridor. Lara paced her quarters, her claws scraping against the metal floor as she fought the growing tension coiling inside her. This was not how it was supposed to be. The ritual should have satisfied all needs, left her clear-headed, focused, free from distractions. Instead, she was restless. Irritated. Needing. She clenched her fists. The human had tampered with something, somehow. There was no other explanation. Her mind told her to resist it, to suppress the unnatural craving. But her body? It betrayed her at every turn. Every memory of the encounter, every breath she took, only deepened the sensation. The way his hands had moved over her, the way he had. She snarled, shaking her head. Enough. She was a warrior. Warriors did not dwell on such base distractions. She needed discipline. Control. Lara forced herself into the combat chamber, gripping the hilt of her training blade. If her body insisted on this unnecessary tension, she would work it out the proper way. Her opponent was a fellow warrior, a seasoned veteran named Kavar, who immediately sensed something was off. You are distracted, he noted as they circled each other. I am focused, she snapped, lunging forward. Kavar dodged with ease, blocking her next strike. Focused? You are practically vibrating. She let out a guttural sound, attacking again. He deflected her blade, stepping back. This aggression, it is not your usual battle intensity, he observed. Lara tightened her grip. Kavar studied her, then smirked. Ah. I see. Her eyes narrowed. See what? Kavar chuckled. You are suffering from post-mating residual effects. Lara stiffened. That is absurd. He tapped his chin. Is it? Our species does not experience such things, and yet here you are, throwing yourself into battle like a warrior denying something. She swung at him, but he dodged easily. Kavar laughed. Who was your partner this cycle? She bristled. His smirk widened. Oh. A human. She exhaled sharply, sheathing her blade with more force than necessary. Kavar folded his arms. I hear humans are different. Their biology is not as rigid as ours. Their approach is more. He tilted his head. Exploratory. Lara's claws flexed. He chuckled. Perhaps the human unlocked something in you. She stormed away. The ship's corridors blurred as she moved, her pulse hammering in her ears. Kavar was wrong. He had to be. And yet, her feet carried her straight back to Ethan's door. She hesitated for only a moment before slamming her fist against the panel. The door slid open, revealing Ethan once again sprawled lazily in his chair. He grinned. Let me guess. You're here to tell me I broke you again? Lara stalked inside, eyes flashing. I want answers. Ethan leaned back. Okay. Shoot. She exhaled through her nose. Why do I still desire another round? His smirk deepened. I mean, I could give you a lot of reasons. Her jaw tensed. You tampered with me. Altered my cycle. Ethan raised an eyebrow. I think you're giving me a little too much credit. Her claws dug into her palms. Then explain. He studied her for a moment before stepping closer. All right, fine. You want to know why? She didn't move as he stopped just inches away, looking up at her with that infuriating, amused expression. It's simple, he said. You liked it. She flinched. That is not possible. Ethan shrugged. Could have fooled me. Lara's throat tightened. He grinned. You're not broken. You're just experiencing things differently. Maybe for the first time. Her hands clenched at her sides. That is not how it works. He chuckled. And yet, here you are. She bared her teeth. I should break you. Ethan smirked. You already tried. Her mind warred with itself. She should walk away, but she couldn't. Ethan's smirk softened slightly. Listen. Maybe you just want more. And that's okay. Her fingers twitched. He tilted his head. So, you gonna keep fighting it? Lara swallowed hard. And then she turned and fled. Again. Ethan's laughter chased her down the hall. Lara strode through the corridors, jaw clenched so tightly it ached. This was madness. She had trained her entire life to control her instincts, to suppress distractions. Yet here she was, thrown into chaos by a single encounter with a human. Her fingers twitched at her sides, her body rebelling against her mind. She needed a solution, an answer that did not involve Ethan and his infuriating smirk. She marched straight to the War Council chamber, determined to drown this unwanted tension in duty. Warriors sat around the great table, discussing strategy, fleet positioning, planetary defenses. Familiar topics. Topics that had never failed to command her attention. Until now. She took her seat, back straight, face blank. The Supreme Commander began the debriefing. Lara tried to listen, tried to focus. But then Ethan's voice echoed from the hallway beyond the chamber. And her body betrayed her. A sharp shiver rippled down her spine. A wave of heat pooled in her stomach. Her fingers tensed on the table. Kavar, seated beside her, noticed immediately. He turned slightly, smirking. You are distracted, he murmured. Lara inhaled sharply. I am not. His smirk widened. You are. I am fine, she bit out. Kavar leaned in slightly. It is the human, isn't it? Her claws pressed into her palm. Kavar chuckled. This is fascinating. I have never seen a Veilith warrior react like this. She ground her teeth together. Across the table, the Supreme Commander's gaze flicked toward them. Something to share, Warrior Lara? She snapped to attention. No, Commander. The Supreme Commander studied her for a long moment before nodding and returning to the discussion. Kavar leaned back in his seat, grinning. You are not fine. Lara resisted the urge to slam his head through the table. She gritted her teeth and forced herself to focus, but her mind would not comply. Ethan's voice still lingered. The way he had looked at her, smirked at her, the way he had said, "No, enough." She had to end this. She shot to her feet. Permission to leave. The Supreme Commander arched a brow. Denied. This is a critical. Lara was already gone. She stalked through the halls, ignoring the startled glances from passing warriors. She needed closure. She needed to prove to herself that this was not what it felt like. And that meant confronting the source. The doors to Ethan's quarters slid open before she even knocked. He was waiting. Leaning against the doorway, arms crossed, grinning like he had been expecting this. Well, he drawled. Couldn't stay away, huh? Lara's nostrils flared. You will fix this. Ethan's grin widened. Fix what? Her claws twitched. You know what. He chuckled, stepping back and gesturing for her to enter. She did, the doors sliding shut behind her. Ethan turned, watching her with amusement. You've got that look again. She exhaled sharply. I do not have a look. Oh, you do. And it says, *human, I hate you for making me feel things I shouldn't feel. Asterisk. She glared. He took a step closer. So. You ready to admit it yet? She folded her arms. Admit what? That you liked it. Lara stiffened. Ethan's voice dropped slightly. That you want more. Her throat tightened. He smirked. Because you do. Otherwise, you wouldn't be standing here, fists clenched, trying not to tackle me. She should tackle him. End this stupid conversation. Instead, she just stood there. Silent. Still. Ethan's grin softened slightly. Look. Maybe it's simple. Maybe for once you can stop overanalyzing it and just. She turned sharply, striding toward the exit. Again. Again. Ethan sighed behind her. You know, you're gonna keep coming back. She didn't stop. Didn't acknowledge the truth in his words. Because he was right. Lara paced in her quarters, muscles tense, mind racing. This was unacceptable. Her thoughts should be sharp, focused on duty, on war strategy, not on him, not on the smirk that haunted her waking moments, not on the feelings she couldn't shake. She needed an answer. A solution. A way out. And yet, every logical approach failed. Meditation? Useless. Combat training? Made it worse. Isolation? A disaster. Her body wouldn't forget. Wouldn't stop wanting. She slammed her fist against the wall. Enough. There was only one way to resolve this. Her feet moved before her mind had finished deciding. Down the corridor, past the watchful gazes of warriors who knew something was wrong, she ignored them all, marching straight to his door. It slid open instantly. Ethan stood there, arms crossed, expecting her. He leaned casually against the doorway, the corner of his mouth lifting. Took you long enough. Lara exhaled sharply. You will not speak. He held up his hands. Okay. She stepped inside, the door shutting behind her. Silence. She stood there, tense, as Ethan watched her. Then, finally, she spoke. This craving. It will not go away. Ethan nodded slowly. Yeah. I figured. She inhaled sharply. I must resolve it. His lips twitched. And how exactly do you plan on doing that? She hesitated. Just for a fraction of a second. Ethan's grin widened. You're fighting yourself so hard, Zy. Her claws flexed. I am not. You are. He took a slow step forward. And I gotta say, it's adorable. Her eye twitched. I will break you. He chuckled. You keep saying that, but you haven't yet. She exhaled sharply. Because you are an irritating human. And you can't stop thinking about me. She stiffened. Ethan smirked. That's why you're here. Right. Her fingers twitched at her sides. He took another step closer. Lara should turn away, should end this before it spiraled further. But she didn't. Because she already knew the truth. And so did he. Ethan tilted his head. So. We gonna keep pretending? Silence stretched between them. Lara exhaled slowly. Then, finally, she smirked. No, she said. Ethan grinned. Good. And this time, she didn't run.